Good morning. It's great to be here with you, and just another big thank you for those who came and worked at our Salina house and blessed us incredibly. Yes, and just your partnership with us in prayer and monetary means has been phenomenal. I thought we'd start by just talking about a few scriptures this morning. And the first is Isaiah 61, verses 1 to 3. And Isaiah is prophesying about the Messiah coming there and what he's going to be about. Well, Jesus in Luke 4, 18 and 19 reads from the book of Isaiah from 61, 1 to 3, proclaiming his mission here on earth. And it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Jesus was proclaiming his mission. His mission is our mission. His mission is our mission. Luke 15, if you recall, that's three parables about the lost. The lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. The lost sheep just wandered off. The lost coin was lost by somebody. Somebody else had a hand in their lostness. And the lost son, he rebelled. He chose. He chose to walk away from the Father. He chose the dark path. But the emphasis of these three parables is on finding that which is lost and celebrating when they're found. The Lord's celebration when the lost are found. That's his heart. It doesn't matter how they were lost. It doesn't matter if they just strayed away. It doesn't matter if they chose to be lost. It doesn't matter if they were lost because someone else has done something to them and set them on a trajectory of some sort. God's heart is the same. Lost is lost. And he rejoices when they're found. Then we have Matthew 25. The first 13 verses are about, you know what, he's coming back. Be ready. Be ready. Jesus is coming back. Be ready. Verses 14 to 30 is the parable of the talents. And if you remember that parable, it's the three stewards that get different amounts. And each one is to be a steward of that amount, right? And the first gets more, the second got a little less, the third one got very little. They were given a period of time to steward what had been given to them. And the one that got the least buried it, if you remember. He buried it. He said, I knew you were rough and you'd require much. And so I buried it. And if you recall God's response for sitting on his gifts from the Father, the Lord was not happy. The Lord was not happy. Here's what he said. Take his or her talent and give it to the one who risked the most. Get rid of this now my paraphrase. Get rid of this play it safe one who won't go out on a limb at all. Who won't step out in faith and risk with the things they've been given. What you've been given to be a steward of. So it's all about faith. It's all about stepping out in faith. It's all about the Father's heart. He's not mean and cruel. He's not a taskmaster. And then we see verses 31 to 46 in Matthew 25. This is the parable of the sheep and the goats. And if you recall, this is what was happening to God's people. I was hungry. I was thirsty. I was homeless and shivering and sick and in prison. And Jesus says, you failed to come. You failed to minister to me. You failed to reach out to me. You failed to do anything for me. These are being overlooked. These are being ignored. And Jesus says, you did it to me. What you did to the least of these, you've done it to me. God's heart. God's heart. And I am convinced more and more that as Christ's followers and as his church, and if you read about in Scripture what he's going to do through his church, even in end times, I am convinced we're not going to be able to remain comfy, cozy, comfortable, inactive, because the Lord is calling every one of us to action. Every one of us to action. How many of you saw the movie Sound of Freedom that was out recently? Yeah, a few of you. Tim Ballard, that was about the organization Operation Underground Railroad. And, it was a rescue of 2 children over in another country. And very well done, very heart-wrenching, heart-moving. I remember sitting there at the end of the movie because both children get rescued, which, you're just like elated. Hallelujah, they got rescued. But on my end of things and what we do with the rescued, I'm like, the journey's just beginning. The journey is just beginning. And there was this heaviness in my heart. But Tim Ballard wrote a book called Slave Stealers, and it's excellent. But he compares old slavery with new slavery. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you because I think we're very aware of how detrimental old slavery was on many levels. But the definition of a slave is a person is the property, who is the property and wholly subject to another. So a person is property. They are subject completely to someone else. Old slavery, as you recall, existed as the protected law of the land. Its practice was open, it was overt, it was founded in deep hatred, racial discrimination, and politics. New slavery that's happening today functions outside of the law. It's perpetuated by criminals or criminal organizations. Its practices are hidden and often difficult to discover. And for the most part, it's for profit. It's based on profit. It's based on opportunity rather than race or policy. However, the commonality that he talks about is both put their victims in the worst imaginable circumstances and positions. You can't compare one with the other. You can't judge one as being more difficult or more severe than the other. They are both atrocious and hideous and hard. New slavery today, just to kind of paint a picture of what's going on and what it looks like. The definition of human sex trafficking according to federal law, it occurs when a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age yet. So anyone under 18 should not ever be labeled as prostitutes. By federal law, they are sex trafficking victims. Whether a woman enters the sex industry by choice, and I put that in quotes because I don't believe any little girl grows up dreaming of being a prostitute or being in the sex industry. Things have happened that put them in a trajectory, always. And we've had a lot of ladies come through our doors in the last 12 years, and there's always a trajectory they've been set on early on. So whether they enter by choice or by force, fraud, or coercion, as in the case of trafficking, here's what research indicates. More women are employed in the sex industry now than any other time in history. There's more strip clubs in the United States than any other time in history. Between 66 and 90% of women in the sex industry were sexually abused as children, and that's part of that trajectory that I'm talking about. Women in the sex industry experience higher rates of substance abuse issues, rape, violent assault, sexually transmitted diseases, domestic violence, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. Their PTSD is as severe as war veterans. It's so severe. 89% of women in the sex industry said they wanted to escape, but they had no other means of survival. They wanted to get out, but didn't know how else they would survive financially and otherwise. You know, human trafficking is becoming the #1 crime in the world. The top three are arms, drugs, and trafficking. And I would venture to say that where you find drugs and arms, you're going to find trafficking. They're all pretty much intermingled as the top three in the world. The average age into prostitution is 12 to 14-year-olds in our country, but much, much younger worldwide. There's an estimated 45 million people trapped in human trafficking around the world. You know, that's more than all the combined slaves to date. Just to give you another comparative there. It's a $150 billion industry. I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. So how much does $150 billion buy? Well, with the money made in human trafficking every year, you could buy every Starbucks franchise in the world. That's $150 billion. You could purchase every NBA team in the nation. You could buy every Target store across the globe. $150 billion industry. A lot of bad people are getting on board. A lot of bad people getting on board for that kind of money. Pornography is one of the main reasons for increased demand. It's a simple business model. Supply and demand. Because there is demand, there is supply. If there was no demand, there would be no need for supply. Child porn in the United States is the fastest growing type of porn. And we're the #1 destination for sex trafficking victims. The U.S. State Department estimates between 600,000 and 800,000 foreign nationals piped into our country every year for this purpose. Mostly women and children. The number of U.S. citizens, so our own citizens that are being trafficked within our country, is between 100,000 and 300,000, with 200,000 kids being at risk for sexual exploitation every year. UNICEF reports worldwide there's over 1 million children entering the sex trade every single year. 1 million kids. Poverty is a big driver of this worldwide. The family can't feed their children, so they may sell one so they can feed the other 4. Or they're looking for an opportunity for their child. And easily coerced, easily. If you did see Sound of Freedom, you saw that there. The father was basically coerced. He was lied to. Here's a stat I want you to hang on to. 0.1% get rescued. 30% of that 0.1% stay rescued. 0.1% get rescued. 30% of that 0.1% stay rescued. I tell our ladies all the time, you're a miracle. You are a walking, talking miracle. You are the 30% of the 0.1% that has been rescued and is doing this thing. You're walking out of it. You're being transformed. That's miracle stuff. That's God's stuff. That's inner transformation stuff. That's not just modifying behavior stuff. It's huge. It's just huge. You know, Revelation 12:11 says the enemy is conquered. The enemy is kicked in the gut, my paraphrase, by the blood of the Lamb, which we're going to celebrate communion and what he's done on the cross for us, because the cross was pivotal. Blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so we're doing both this morning. We're doing both this morning. So the enemy is getting he's getting the air knocked out of him this morning. And I want to introduce to you Andrea, who's going to give some testimony. First off, her story prior to Homestead. We're kind of breaking up her story into 3 parts, but the first part is how she ended up at Homestead. Andrea Carter, our 2018 graduate.
Good morning. As Deb was talking about trajectory, my trajectory started when I was 6, and I was molested at a babysitter's house, and there was also some incest going on in the home. That led up to a lot of problems with my mother. So at the age of 16, I moved out. By 17, I had a child. Unfortunately, the child was born with a large hole in his brain and had to end up having emergency brain surgery when he was 9 weeks old. He's blind, autistic, cerebral palsy, all kinds of things. And I could not care for him. I was 17 years old. So he was put into custody, and then I didn't get to see or hear about him for 4 years. And then my sister adopted him, and he was put back in my life. And I learned a big lesson about that. I ruined my life in that 4 years because woe is me. Oh my gosh, he's going to die. I'm never going to see him again. And that was just lies, not truth. And when I got him back, I realized things don't stay the same. They get better. And so at the age of 25, I was coming out of a marriage, a 7-year marriage, and I met a very bad man. We dated for a few weeks, and he started abusing me. There was domestic violence. And he went to jail, and when he came out, he decided he was going to sexually assault me. And I ended up having a baby out of that sexual assault. And he's 19 today, and he's a blessing. I kept him and raised him. And so a lot of trauma there. And then I had all 3 boys, and my mother passed away. And I came to Christ. Well, the devil was not happy with that. And I was attacked. I ended up losing my home, my van, my income. And slowly, everything was taken, and eventually my children. So I got back I was on the streets, and I ran into my son's father, and he offered to help. Oh boy. So for the next 3 years, we in the streets, house to house to house to house, shelter to shelter to shelter. I was beaten so much that I couldn't keep a job. So because of that is when I was trafficked. He decided to traffic me so we could have income. And eventually, the children were taken, and unfortunately, I couldn't get together in DCF's timing, so my rights were terminated, and that's a little taste of what has happened.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. You know, I-70, I-35 are main corridors for trafficking. We think and we know it happens over there in other countries. We know it happens in the large cities. What we're blind to is that it's happening in our neighborhoods. It's happening in our backyard. And these interstates are transporting trafficking victims, and they're servicing along the way. They're forced to service along the way. You have 135 that comes right into your community. That's another main vein in Kansas. 2 of the top cities for trafficking are in Kansas. Kansas City and Wichita. 2 of the top cities in the nation. That's crazy when we think about all the cities in our nation. So it is happening here. It is happening here. It's happening over there. It is happening on the coast. It is happening in the large cities. But it's happening here among us as well. The Midwest is known for a prime recruitment area for human trafficking. Kansas is actually a hub and an originating state. We're called an originating state. And what that means is that our young people are being recruited. That's what originating state means. We have lots being recruited from our state to go into trafficking and being trafficked. 1 in 5 kids receive a sexual solicitation online. And every 2 minutes, a child is trafficked for sexual exploitation. Every 2 minutes. It's frightening. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of the picture, and Andrea's story kind of paints the picture that has similar patterns with a lot of our ladies. But let's talk about a solution now. Homestead is one solution for survivors of sex trafficking. There are 4 prongs of helping: prevention and awareness. You know, even just talking today begins to open your eyes some, and your awareness and your capacity for this. There's rescue, where you literally get them out of the situation. There's restoration, where they get stabilized and ready to do the hard work of coming out of that, and reintegration. And Homestead reintegration, where they're walking through recovery and healing, and then ready to shift back into mainstream society and be a contributing person in society again. So Homestead is a part of all of these prongs of helping. We're heaviest in restoration and reintegration. It all started for Homestead back in October of 2009. I went to a training in Wesleyan headquarters. It was 4 or 5 major denominations coming together with facts about trafficking. And it was overwhelming. I was hearing the same numbers that I have already shared with you this morning. But the stat that stayed in my head that day, over that 4 days, was that all of these denominations had done a survey across the United States, and there's hundreds of thousands being recruited in or tricked in or just kidnapped in. In the whole United States, they had identified 100 beds for those who wanted help. 100 beds. Hundreds of thousands going in, 100 beds for those who wanted help. So I go back, I talk to the women's ministry team, about a dozen ladies, and Holy Spirit just set our hair on fire to do something about this. Now, it's a huge thing, right? Trafficking, $150 billion, $45 million. I mean, the stats, it's just overwhelming. We don't even know where to start. So where do you start when you don't know where to start? You start with prayer, don't you? You start with prayer. And that's exactly what we did. We're like, Lord, you have put such a conviction on our heart to step into something on behalf of these survivors. We had no idea what the Lord wanted. We just knew his heart was for them. So we began to pray. We began to read books together that would educate us. Then as we got more educated, we did awareness events. We did prayer drives where we knew this was happening all around our community and beyond. We would come clear over to Salina, actually, even to the truck stops here. And so after 2 years of praying, a tragedy happened actually with one of the ladies on our ministry team, our women's ministry team. Influenza A and B attacked her heart. She was 38 years old with 4 small children and hubby, and she passed away within a few days. Her husband, knowing how passionate she was about this, gave a monetary gift of $25,000 to get this ministry started. So that got my attention. It's like, wow, we've been given a big chunk of change. Now, I'm thinking small. Our God does not think small most of the time. I'm thinking small. And within a couple months more, I had a couple in our church come forward and say, we believe this home that we own is supposed to be used for this. Mind you, I'm not advertising for a home. I'm not asking for a home at all. Nobody was asking for anything specific, but God laid it on their hearts. And we had a hard time keeping up with the Lord as he began to unfold This is what you've been praying about for 2 years. This is what I want you to be about. This is on my heart. This is on my heart, and I want you to go after it. Wow. And he put it all in place. And we opened our doors in July of 2012. And we had our first 2 ladies in August of 12, one from New Jersey and the other from Oklahoma. Our gals come from all over the United States. Many times they'll settle in right here in Kansas because they're away from their traffickers, and they're also in a safe place with support and resources. And so as we began to pray just a couple of years ago about expansion, we get pro bono services for all of our ladies that move them forward in every area of their life. So physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, educationally. Because career training is a big deal. I knew that if they did not have a way to thrive financially, if I'd gone into the clubs enough to know by then, they fall back into fast money, desperate for help, financial help. So the career training became extremely important. So they were proud of what they were doing, and it would sustain them financially. Then the healing and recovery, getting all of the services from the get-go. We've had pro bono services for their trauma, for their mental health, for their addiction issues, if those are present. We've had medical care for them. We do a weekly support group where they unpack their stories with a therapist, just our girls in the program. I do a weekly study with them, Bible study that's faith-based recovery books, to tool them some more. We go to church together. This all started out under the umbrella of Westview Community Church, which is a sister Wesleyan church in Manhattan, and I've been on the pastoral team there, the leadership team, for 27 years now. So as we were looking at how do we expand this, we have 6 beds here in Manhattan. I was turning away. I mean, I probably turned away 300 to 400 applications because we didn't have room. So we began to look at how do we expand our bed space. We get all of these amazing pro bono services for up to 12 ladies a year. Well, the size of Manhattan would not support pro bono services for double that, 24, 25 ladies a year. So we began to look beyond and pray. Okay, Lord, then where? Then where? And I put out the feelers to a number of Wesleyan pastors within an hour of us, as to, hey, is the Lord leading you all to join us in this so we can duplicate this program in a nearby community? And lo and behold, I get a phone call from the executive pastor of First Covenant Church in Salina. And he said, Deb, have you ever thought about expanding Homestead? Well, actually, we've been praying for some time about that. So he said, we have a house, and this house has been used for ministry for foster girls who are aging out of foster care. And what we found is that we can do this ministry for them without the house, because they don't want to be in another group home. So he said, how about we partner and you all step in to our community as well? So in April of 2021, we opened Salina House. So it's Homestead. It's a Homestead chapter. It's a duplicated program. It's very same, all the same services and such. And so we doubled our bed space. We went from 6 beds to 13 beds. So phenomenal, just phenomenal. We have already had 3 graduates in the 2 years we've been open over there, and we're getting ready to graduate the 4th. Some of the job apprenticeships that we do with the ladies: dental assisting, optician and optical technician, property management, floral design. We've partnered with K-State University, with Habitat for Humanity, with Big Lakes. almost anything that's apprenticeable. I'm not shy to go and ask. You know, all I can say is no, right? Would you take in one of our ladies and apprentice her in this career path? And it has been phenomenal to see the Lord open those doors and our ladies to get training and tooled to step into a career, which is phenomenal. The ladies that come to Homestead do not have to be a Christ follower to come into our program, but they have to be open. So you can't hinder. But I tell you what, once they're surrounded by the unconditional love of God, and that just gets poured out on them in so many ways, it makes impact. It makes huge impact. In fact, we measure success by impact. Graduation is a high bar, and it's wonderful when they stick with the program and can reach graduation after a year to year and a half usually. But we impact them whether they are there for 1 month or a year and a half or 3 years or whatever it might be, because the unconditional love of God impacts lives. And they're not the same. They're not the same after that happens. So they can come in as a non-Christ follower, but usually that doesn't last very long. The Holy Spirit starts working in powerful ways. They stay anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. We've even had one stay for 3 years, and she has stepped into a house manager role now. So it's fantastic. We put a network of support around them, all kinds of resources around them, all kinds of services around them, and the unconditional love of God. We have over 100 volunteers in Manhattan. There's all kinds of beautiful Christ-following people that pour in. And we're building that volunteer base over in Salina. It takes a while, but we're building it there as well. We currently have 7 ladies in the Homestead program. We've had 23 graduates. We're getting ready to graduate the 24th. And we've impacted 84 ladies in the 12 years with long-term care. God is a big God. He's doing the miraculous. He's absolutely doing the miraculous. We have had our ladies, like I said, from 23 states in the United States and 2 international gals, one from Haiti, one from South America. The South America little gal, it was a travel agent that had coerced her over, and she landed in Topeka not knowing anything. And so we were contacted. Our other little gal's from Haiti, and we've only had her with us for maybe 5 months so far. Andrea, do you want to talk about your time at Homestead?
I was just commenting to Deb last night. When you're going through something and you look back, you don't realize how much you've changed, how much God has moved in you. And we were discussing that last night. And Homestead impacted me. I've never had unconditional love like that before. I'd never had every need met where I didn't have to worry about where the next meal was coming from, how I was going to get somewhere. I mean, even my hair. We have someone that does our hair, massage therapy, just all these things that give you a normal life. You get to taste what being normal, if there is a normal. They wrap you in services. They wrap you in God's love. They give you 2 mentors, and there were several times I broke down because the enemy was attacking and trying to pull me backwards, and I leaned in on them, and we lean in on Deb quite a bit for prayer. Prayer is key. The house managers are trained to pray with you 24 hours a day. If you have a night terror in the middle of the night, you get the house manager. They pray. If that doesn't help it, you call Deb, and then she prays. And it's just lots of prayer. I was able to complete my certified medication aid training that I had had before, but I let it lapse. And there was volunteers that took me to Topeka twice a week. And when it came to clinicals, I had to be in Topeka at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this young gal would come get me at 4:30 in the morning and drive me to Topeka for my clinicals. So she's walking like Christ right there. That is a sacrifice. I was in the program for about 14 months, and I actually found housing before I graduated. And when I first came to Homestead, I was trying to get my children back, and I was able to work on that. Homestead gave me the opportunity to work on that. And these mentors and these people at Westview are now some of my best friends. We have coffee dates. We do church things together. A whole community just right there for you. I will never go back to Wichita. There's nothing left. And that what was needed too was a change, a heart change, a person, place, and things change. And more about Homestead. This is the biggest thing, and it always slips my mind because the enemy doesn't want me to share that I found my purpose to live in Homestead. They took care of so much. I was not suicidal, but I wanted to die. I didn't want to live. I was the lowest of the low. What is my purpose, God? Why am I here? I don't have my children. I'm parentless. I'm hopeless. What are you planning on doing with me? And he spoke to me clear as day in the middle of Bible study and said, you're going to share your story. You're going to be a beacon of light to other women. I have plans for you. And I mentioned to Deb, just very quietly, which I'm not a quiet person, I just said something about, I want to live. And Deb stopped Bible study. Did you just say you wanted to live? And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. And just monumental. And this is a little funny. Because of finding my purpose to live at Homestead, this was a proclaiming kind of my gratitude and finding my purpose at Homestead. After I graduated, I got a tattoo on my left ankle of the Homestead logo because it was life-changing. It's a miracle, like Deb says. It's a running joke at Homestead that, we won the lottery. Yes, we won God's lottery. We did.
I'd like to share the story. Andrea likes to play tricks on new girls, right? They're fresh, they're nervous, they're scared. They don't know what to think. And Andrea, when she was house manager, would tell the new girls that one of the criteria for graduation was that you got a tattoo like hers. Their eyes would get about this big. You're like wanting to hold them down before they run out the door. But then she laughs, and so they know she's kidding. But she got him for a minute. It's quite funny. But yes. Finding your purpose to live is a pretty big deal. That's why we stopped and celebrated in that moment. I had just listened to her for months on end talk about, I really don't want to be here. I don't even want to be here. Not just here, just living. And that's a little startling, when you have someone that doesn't see why they're here and why God spared them. I mentioned that only 30% of the 0.1% stay rescued. And I want to just share some stats that one of my interns, she looked through the demographics of our first 60 participants. And here's some of the demographics that she found, which I think tells a story. Tells a story about why only 30% of the 0.1% make it. Past drug abuse, 77%. Past alcohol abuse, 53%. Suicidal thoughts, 62%. Suffered past trauma, 85%. PTSD diagnosis, 63%. Past psychiatric or detox care, 79%. You know, you're stepping into a brand new place with brand new people, and you've got all of this fighting against you. What an uphill battle. How overwhelming. How absolutely overwhelming. That's why they're a miracle when they hang in there. That's why they're a miracle when they walk this out. That's why they're a miracle, because they actually make it. I was telling First Service that we had a little 18-year-old come last Wednesday, actually to the Salina house, and she left last night. Why? Because of these things I just read to you coming to the surface. You take away the drugs, that as evil as they are, they have been a number. They've numbed them. They've actually allowed them to survive in some ways. But you take away the drugs, their heads clear, and they remember what has happened to them. They remember the atrocities and the trajectory. And it's absolutely overwhelming. And many times they want to run back to the drugs again. Because I can't do this. I can't deal with this. She called me last night. She said, I've taken 2 Benadryl and I can't sleep. My mind is racing. And I'd watched her earlier in the day. Earlier that evening, she was wanting to self-harm. And you know what self-harm is? It's a release of pain. It's a way that people, a bad way, a not good way, an unhealthy way of releasing pain. She was in so much pain. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. And if you think the enemy wants these girls to make it, he pulls out all the stops to come after them, so they will not continue forward. In fact, one of the stats that I've gotten from Rescue America out of Denver just recently, even though I've seen this with the girls that we're getting into our program, 20 to 30% of trafficking survivors are also satanic ritual abuse survivors. Now, let me tell you, that is a whole nother level of wickedness and trauma. I've never seen anything like it. That's a spiritual matter. They're doing spiritual things to them, along with the physical. Who's available to help them combat that and deal with that? We could not find the resources. We're seeing more and more SRA survivors. We were reaching out. Nobody's dealing with this. Nobody knows. Nobody has training. No one knows what to do with it. So we're opening a new venue of Homestead, which is a deliverance team. And we're currently in training to help those survivors that have that higher level of trauma, demonization, wickedness, atrocity. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I honestly, I tell the Lord, I wish we had it for all of the 84 that we've had, because it's so desperately needed. But you know what? God's timing is perfect. And we're going to be able to minister to those who have even greater trauma than what we've normally seen, which is huge. Just huge. But God transforms. He's still in the miracle working business. It's not just modifying behavior, changing some things on the outside so we look more acceptable. It's transformation from the inside out. That's what he's about. And that changes everything. Changes everything. Andrea, you want to tell them about what's going on today with you before I wrap up?
So one of the things that I started working on right around the time of graduation was trying to get my kids back. The last visit that I saw them when my rights were terminated, I promised them, I made them a promise that I would never stop fighting for them. And God told me that they would be restored to me. So after graduation, actually in the Homestead program even, I started the process of trying to reunite with them. I did hair follicles, I did UAs, I gave them my, I've had an apartment this long, I've done this long, I've had this job this long, and that went on for almost 4 years. Just every couple months we were running to do something for them, and they're like, okay, we turn this into the court, and the court wants you to do this, so we do that. And they'd say, okay, well, we turned that into the court, and now they want you to do this. And it was getting really, really frustrating. And about 2.5 years ago, I get a phone call from my middle son's social worker. They needed some kind of information and had my contact information because I'd been bugging them so long. And I told her about how all these things have been turned into the court, and I just not seeing any fruition. And she goes, well, how long have you had your job? And I'm like, this amount of years. And she goes, well, let's start visitation. So I started visitation with he was 17 at the time, or he was 16 actually. He was 16 at the time. And because of that, I started having family therapy with the youngest, because that would have been a horrible thing to do to him. Let one child see the mother and not the other. But when my middle child's social workers went to court and was explaining how the visits with mother were going really well, the judge and the DA had a coronary. They're like, what are you talking about? Her rights were terminated. There's no contact. Well, the enemy, those social workers lied to me. They didn't turn in one thing, not one thing, to the courts. And God exposed them. God exposed them and blessed me with the chance to get them back. To make a long story short, I went a little over last time. I have custody of my 14-year-old now. Both boys live with me. And just a couple weeks ago, I was blessed with the information. I get to officially adopt my child, because by some reason, by law, I'm not his mother. But so I get to adopt him back, and that is a miracle. I've also had the opportunity to, I was one of the first house moms in Salina. And that was a God thing, because that's when I first started having visitation with the middle child, and he lives in Salina. So that was all orchestrated. So then I continued to be a house mom in Manhattan. I did that for 2 years, and I worked on my weeks off. And then now that I have the children back, obviously I can't be a house mom, be there 7 days a week. Now I've graduated to being a mentor. So I get to be a beacon of light to ladies that come into the program. And as you heard, I found my will to live, and that God said he was going to use my story to help other women. So I was blessed financially when Brennan my youngest came back, and I was able to take the summer off and, get acclimated, love on him, do fun things as a family again, be whole and healed together. And I said, oh, well, I'll go back to work in the fall. I'll go back to work in the fall. The fall comes, and the Lord says, you're not going back to work. You're going to start your own business. You are going to speak to the masses, educators, legislation, and women, all together, expose the lies, open people's eyes to what's going on. So that's just been the last couple months, so that's been exciting. And I just hope that today has showed you how God can take your mess and turn it into a message.
Again, I just want to thank you guys for your partnership. You've been just lovely with the work teams and the monetary help and the praying. There was a couple in first service who had donated a van to us. I don't even know how many years ago. David, do you remember? It was like a 2011 van. It had about 100,000 miles on it. Well, we have put another 100,000 on that van. And the transmission just went out. So we just wore the thing completely out. But what a blessing you all have been. So now we're looking again for another van over in Salina. But wow, how the Lord has used you has been phenomenal. Just in closing, in seeing our ladies from the first day they come into the program, just raw and broken, so afraid, to even 1 year later. And I wish you could see this, and I think Andrea talked about the slow transformation. You just don't see it. It's not like they come into the program and then 2 weeks later, voila, it's all different. But the slow transformation that happens over the course of even 1 year is nothing shy of a miracle. You wouldn't even recognize them. You wouldn't even recognize them. They look so different. They are different because Jesus makes the difference. He transforms lives. He's still doing miracles. And isn't it about empowered people empowering other people? Listening to our calling, restoring the prodigal, being the hands and feet of Jesus, joining Jesus in his mission. The prisoners and the oppressed and that sort of thing isn't always a physical, tangible prison cell. There's many who are in prisons that are spiritual, that are mental and emotional. Striving to overcome evil with good. I just believe that is the mission of the church, and that Christ will accomplish his mission with or without those who are going to say yes to him and step out in faith. And I just believe we are stronger together, and we are going to do some damage to the kingdom of darkness. We are doing damage to the kingdom of darkness. And I just say, we got to lock arms and go after this thing, among other things. So much of it is intertwined with other, like homelessness and, teen pregnancy or early pregnancies or single moms. I mean, there's so much that's intertwined in all this. And it is God's heart for us as the church to step into what he's calling us to and what he's asking us to. So thank you for allowing us to share today, and blessings on all of you.